You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 488, our coverage of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, with the very first episode called The Apostate. And it's a episode that we've been waiting for the better part of 2 years. I think it delivered on a number of things. Super fun episode. Great start to the series. And looking forward to diving into this, starting with someone who you guys probably know by now. He's here with us tonight. Very special guest, Jonesy. Welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm excited. How are you? How are you feeling after having watched the first episode here of season 3?
Yeah, it was a solid episode. Of course, it's actually kind of funny that Bad Batch may have been a superior episode to what we got with this one. So excited to talk about Bad Batch later this weekend, but it was a good start to it. I think for people just getting into the season here that maybe need to get caught up, this was a really good grounding episode for them. But we'll get into it tonight. Yeah,
for sure. And you know, there was a lot of baby Grogu, baby Yoda, baby in the bubble, sorry. And I figured, you know, who better to speak to all of that than our resident lover of Grogu and all things cute and cuddly. Lauren's with us, the third member of our show. Lauren, welcome to the show tonight. How are you?
I'm good. I loved this episode so much, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yep. And do you want to just kind of pull the scratch the surface here with what you got there going in the background? I know you broke out the special.
I just got this little Grogu plushie guy, and I love him so much. So he's behind me now.
And
so everybody.
You guys showed the marketing. He's got the pin. He's got the Cantina Cast pin on there. So
he does have the little Cantina Cast pin.
Oh,
he came that way.
He's representing. Yeah.
He came that way. You paid the extra money to get that shipped over with you.
Special edition.
Yeah, if that. So, okay.
Imagine how many we'd sell of that. If that were true, we'd sell like 2. It'd be great.
Yeah, at least. I mean, triple the sales.
Right.
Does that math add up? If we sell 2, is that triple the? I guess if it's none, no, it's not. Okay.
And I would be one of them. I would get a second one.
Right.
That's exactly right. All right, well, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to skip the news. Outside, I'll just quickly note, if you haven't had a chance to watch Bad Batch, go watch it. I think I put in the Discord chat that it was probably the better, kind of what you said, the better of the 2 episodes, but that's probably not a fair assessment. We're, 10 episodes into that one? This is just getting started. There's a lot of reasons why I think this episode was the way it was, but let's start with kind of opening thoughts. Lauren, I'm going to start with you, since Jonesy kind of gave us a little bit of his already, but give us your kind of initial thoughts. How many times have you had a chance to see it? What was that experience like the first time? And kind of where have you settled in?
Well, I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times now. My first experience watching it, I was in bed drinking my coffee this morning at 6 a.m. So my first experience, I missed some details, I'm sure, which is why I watched it a few more times. But I mean, it was just such a fun episode. And I mean, those little, I don't know, I'm just a sucker for those cute moments. Like that scene with the Anzellans just really stayed with me, even more than like some of the more important plot points.
Right.
So, but I also think we got like some good teasers for what we can expect coming up in the season 2. So for me, it was a well-rounded episode.
Yeah. Jonesy, what about you? Give us, and I want to see if you want to, did you get any initial notes on kind of like the music and effects? I think those were 2 things that we were kind of focused in on, coming off some pretty incredible highs with a number of other Star Wars series. But how did that line up for you with this one?
Well, yeah, Joseph Shirley was the composer for this one. So we get a lot of the themes that we got from Ludwig Göransson. So themes were there. The music was different, though. The music was a little inconsistent for me. There were a couple of moments where it was actually really pretty good. And then the others, I was just like kind of questioning. I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. It felt very different. But again, we have a very small sample right now. And so it's one of those things of what is this going to look like over the course of the next 7 episodes, and you get into it a little bit more. A lot of my thoughts, I had a lot more questions around some of the scenery and really I was yelling at my screen because of the armor, like for a couple of different times during this episode, and that's what really has stuck with me. So I'm really excited to talk about the armor tonight and what her deal is, because I've got problems with her. But you know, regular effects, like I mean, sound effects, all that stuff was all there. Visual effects. We'll talk about the Anzellans. The Anzellans were a lot of fun, but I don't understand like the direction we went with the Anzellans with the puppetry and some of the you know, the audio syncing up with the mouth movements didn't really work for some reason. And I hate to be just a downer right away, but I just don't understand how that was something that was overlooked. It just didn't make sense to me, but it felt like the Anzellans had like a nervous twitch the entire time. So
yeah,
I
well,
don't
they're
know
hopped
what-
up
I
on
was up with
caffeine
that.
all the time.
That is probably true. I mean,
Right.
they're working on droids all the day. So
Yeah.
there's
Or
clearly
cocaine.
something.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna go that far, but
Yeah.
you let the cat out of the bag. You let the baby out of the bubble.
Let the baby out of that. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, that's
Quick on your
cute.
feet there, buddy. So, okay. So here's what I would say. Well, number one, we're back, right? 35-minute episode is what was being touted, reported prior to this. We talked about this on the Final Hype Show. It kind of came in at 35 minutes almost exactly. After you take out all the credits and fluff, it comes out to like 32 minutes. I don't think I really had a problem with the pacing in 32 minutes. It did feel like they were throwing a lot at us. A lot of it was very exposition. Like you said, getting things set up, getting everybody reminded in terms of where we are, where we left off. You know, let's get the Cara Dune thing out of the way. Let's get him set on his path to Mandalore. I guess the one thing that I was not expecting was the IG-11, but we'll talk about that here later because I am pretty excited, but I've got questions about whether or not that does anything to the impact he had and how he kind of gave his life up. And I think we talked about that. I think it was in the top 3 moments of season 1? Lauren, do you remember if we were talking about that? It was somewhere that we talked about whether or not how much that gave his character weight, right? And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
so the
that was
outstanding.
my top moment was his sacrifice of season 1. So
Okay, so that kind of So we'll come to you on that because I want to know how that impacted that moment for you, or did it? Maybe it didn't. So, so all good things there. I think overall it was a pretty balanced episode. It was a good mix of old stuff, new stuff from the series perspective. There were some canons, there were some legends. We've got some Clone Wars stuff. We've got Star Wars Rebel stuff, practical effects, CGI effects. There was drama. There was comedy. There was just a lot of a lot of balance, but it was all really kind of condensed in that 32 minutes ish when it was all said and done. I enjoyed Grogu this time. I mean, I always do, but anytime he was on stage, I mean, it's just like the cutest thing in the world. Like the music's playing, you can't help but smile, you can't help but laugh. So I thought they did a pretty good job of kind of putting him in there, but he wasn't always front and center. I mean, he had his moments, don't get me wrong, especially when he does this no squeezy. We talked about that, the little hug there. But he had his particular moments in there, but it was really still focused on Din. It wasn't so much focused on Grogu at this point, which I think all makes sense. I think we're going to probably get that at some point, but I felt like the focus there was actually really good. And then my thoughts quickly on the music and effects. I thought the effects were great as usual. It did feel like we were out of the COVID era. I don't know how to better way. It just felt like aesthetically the environment seemed larger than they had been in the past. And I don't know if that's because they've gotten better at the, what's it called? I just lost the name of it. The volume.
Volume. Yeah.
Yeah. Or was it more, did we have more, outside larger sets or something? I'm not sure what that is, but it didn't feel like a COVID, like a Kenobi series where we felt very confined. So that was good. The music for me was just kind of there. Like we had all the right themes and everything. But like you said, I think you could argue that with every one of the episodes in season 1 and 2, Ludwig did a pretty good job of inserting something that just stood out, like caught our attention, even if it was minuscule. Maybe it came back later, but for whatever reason, nothing really stood out to me. But like you said, I think you made a good point earlier, Jonesy. It's still early, and this was a 32-minute episode. I wasn't expecting them to have really anything big and grand. I think the music they used for what they showed us was fine and appropriate. So no complaints. I think it was no damage done. How about that in terms of the music? So, whew. Okay. So those are kind of our initial opening thoughts. This episode was directed by Rick Famuyiwa. We talked about this, I think, in the Final Hype episode. I think he's now, I don't know if it's still official, but I think I've saw that he's got 2 more episodes coming. Episodes 7 and 8, or chapters, no, God, no, we do math now. Chapters 23 and 24. Is that right? Nope.
I'm not going to do the math.
No,
'Cause I would be
whatever
wrong.
it is. Yeah, the last 2 episodes, he's doing those as well. This was written by Jon Favreau. We all know that he's written every single one of these. Some real quick interesting thing about the cast. So Paz Vizsla didn't sound like Jon Favreau, right? To me initially, and I thought, okay, well maybe he's got allergies, right? Or maybe it was just the helmet or the way it was filmed. And then when I saw the credits, I thought, whoa, okay, so they've brought in somebody named Tite Fletcher to do the voice. Jonesy, is there anything there around that? Why wouldn't he just? I mean, he didn't have like a big part. He only had a couple of grunting lines and "to the air," I think is what he said at one point. But any reason why they wouldn't have brought John in?
Well, John was never in the suit anyway. It was always somebody else, I believe.
For sure.
So maybe they were just giving the actor credit, the suit actor, rather than the voice. I don't know if it's the voice, if Favreau did the voice or not. So I don't know. That part's not clear. I can imagine Jon Favreau would be uncredited anyway for the voice of Paz. I don't think he ever got credit for it in the.
Oh, really? I thought he did. I'll look that up, but go ahead.
No, I think it was all just behind the scenes. So I don't think there was anything really to that.
Okay. The kid, Ragnar is his name. If anybody caught that, it's an interesting name. Almost sounds like Ragnarok. Maybe there's something there. Right. We'll see. But that is Wesley Kimmel, who's Jimmy Kimmel's nephew. So I don't know how this all happened, but we know Jimmy Kimmel's a huge Star Wars fan, so I'm sure that was part of it. But that's his kid. IG-11, again, we talked about him coming back already. Taika Waititi was there. That was a rumor back almost half a year ago, that he was going to be in the series again. And it was pretty much dismissed by everyone saying, why? Like, why would he come back? He's got to be doing a different character. There's no reason why he'd come back because IG-11's dead. We had Vane by Marty Matalis. The Anzellan crew was Shirley Henderson, who's Moaning Myrtle from Harry Potter, if you guys know who she is. And then Gorian Shard was played by Nonso Anansi. I hope I said that right. I got more about him later. I already have theories as to why that character's in this, but we can talk about it here. Okay, so the preludes. So the opening titles, first off, I thought it was very cool that they did the sound effects over the Star Wars logo and the droid presentation that we normally get. They didn't have the recap at all, which I thought they were. I mean, there was a recap, but I don't remember them. And I don't. To be fair, I think I only saw it once, but I don't recall them ever talking about, oh, he left to go talk with Luke Skywalker, or he went to go train with Luke Skywalker, and there was not a special that was done. Jonesy, any reason why? Is it just because everyone already knows exactly what happens because everyone watched the Book of Boba Fett, or do you think this was a miss?
I think it's a little bit of a miss because I think Jon Favreau, even some of the interviews, it sounds like are they going to do this later to fill in the gap? So it suggests that there's going to be something else that comes in a little bit later on. I mean, this one was important because what they did recap was as soon as they brought IG-11 on screen with the sacrifice and some of that, I was like, okay, there's something up with whatever's going on here.
They opened with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was, some of this was reestablishing Navarro and Grief Karga. So as soon as we started getting those elements, you just know what's coming on screen almost immediately. And this one took a little while to get there because we got the Mandalorians first. But yeah, I think it was a bit of a miss, though, because I think for people coming right into it, and maybe they did pan Book of Boba Fett, you get a little bit lost. And this is what they had talked about in the interviews, that they were going to help bring people along and make sure that they understood, with how much time had passed and things like that. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But I think this was a little bit of a miss, though, that they could have brought some of that into it. And again, it would have kind of fed the other. It's like, oh, you didn't see Luke Skywalker? Well, go watch Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, everybody watched Luke Skywalker, so I mean, that's kind of silly anyway. But
yeah,
still, I think it was a little bit of a miss. Like, why accentuate all these other things, but not bring that at all into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed pretty important, and they do kind of. There's that moment when Grief Karga is like talking to him, and he's like, "What happened? I thought you completed your mission." He's like, "Oh, it's complicated." And I thought that was kind of funny that they did that because it's really complicated.
But then dropped him off, and then he came back.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, well, caught up.
Yeah,
nicely done.
Thank you, and we move on, which is fine. I think they should have had something still. Maybe there is still something coming. You could argue too that I think the most watched Disney Plus episode of anything so far has been the Book of Boba Fett, the season finale. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we were in COVID at the time. The numbers have dropped off significantly since then, right? Subscriptions are down. But maybe they kind of went into this thinking, okay, well, everybody and their grandmother has seen that series. And, there's been enough talk about it, enough buzz that we don't necessarily have to explain it. And maybe that was enough. I don't know. It just seems kind of weird that they didn't. Well, Favreau even said they were going to do some kind of a video. He even said it. It was like
right.
Last
week.
What's
curious is we went through all of the effort at the beginning of this episode to reestablish Din Djarin as an apostate. and that he left. I mean, literally, we've had the same lines. I think 3 different episodes that we've had, like where they recount that he has now been kicked out, and we had it in the previews, not only this season but in previous seasons. So some of that is like, why do we drill that into our heads? But we didn't go back and revisit briefly, Grogu's return to Din Djarin and Book of Boba Fett. So that was just a choice there. I'm a little bit confused about, but whatever. They did acknowledge it at the very least. I think that was important that they acknowledged it, that there was a thing. I don't think we have to belabor a lot of that, which is fine, which is what you and I do every week. We belabor a lot of these things that probably we should just let go of.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so I guess I'm glad they didn't do that. But then they go back and revisit the whole, you removed your helmet. Okay, gosh, yeah, okay, we get it.
It makes me think that they're trying to push people to actually watch Book of Boba Fett in its entirety rather than just getting the recap. Because it's like you said, there's no reason for them to not recap it. So it makes me think that there's a reason that they didn't.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they're trying to push the number of subs or push the number of viewings or whatever it is. Lauren, I want to ask you a quick question, because this episode opened up and we got, of course, the armor. She's making a helmet. This is all cool. And then when they kind of pulled out and we finally get the whole scene, we'll break down the scene a lot in more detail here, but I was completely duped. Like, I thought this was a flashback, 100% hook, line, and sinker, until, Mando flies in and shoots the, alligator thing. Or is it a crocodile? I don't know. Either way, when he shoots that thing,
Howard, did you...
What was it?
A mosasaur. That's what it looks like to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a prehistoric creature.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were a resident paleontologist or whatever that is. Okay, yeah. No, that's cool. We'll call it that. It's better than what I had. I think I had Crocodile Mundi, which is a terrible dad joke. But how did you feel about that? Were you did you get duped as well? Were you thinking that's flashback, or were you just kind of in the moment?
I thought it was a flashback for sure, because the last time we saw them, there was no Mandalorians that were part of the Armorer's group. It was just her and Paz, at least what I thought. So I just assumed that with how many people there were, that this must have been in the past before they got scattered.
Yeah. Well, and this is good though, because it does speak to, right, some time has passed. And again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but their ranks have regrown at this point. We can see that they look like they've got a lot of young people, which probably makes sense since they're very young and impressionable, and they can be well taken advantage of and brainwashed, just like the children of the Watch would like.
Oh, goodness.
So, but let's talk about that. So they're coming out. They've got their marching band, I guess, a couple drums. There's some very interesting banners here, which I was like super hyper focused on. That they were kind of, I mean, they lead out with the mythosaur on one of the banners, and then the other banner has the Clan Vizsla logo, which is what looks like the sakura flower plant or tree, whatever it is. But interesting enough on that one though, here's something I didn't know, and I know enough about Mandalorian armor to sound like I know what I'm talking about. But what I don't know is whether or not Vizsla's clan ever had, and I'm going to call it the number 7 because that's what we call it, and I think it's still to be determined about what that is. But I'm not sure if they're trying to draw connections to that number 7 that you see on that banner. Here's where I'm going. That number 7 on the banner goes back to what Boba Fett has on his crest as well. So I'm not sure what they're trying to allude there, whether or not there's some kind of connection. Does it mean something else? It's been an open book, so really they can kind of write whatever they want since it's never really been defined in the past. But Jonesy, what are you thinking on some of the banners there? And also, I got a question. Are these really just a lot of, I mean, I'm assuming these are just the clans that have come together and they fall under Children of the Watch, and they can be from multiple clans, which I think is a very significant point of interest.
Well, yeah, especially if this is a right for a young one, you can imagine that the clans do come together, especially if they're coming to the armor, because we talked about before in the final hype show, and maybe in the last top 3 as well, that the armor might be the only one of her kind right now that can do the things that they're doing, and for her to craft the helmet, for this coming of age ceremony and then the official taking of the creed, then it makes sense for them to make a bigger deal out of it and for them to all come together and show up. So I don't know that this means exactly that they are like a commune or another covert, but it could be that they're coming together for this event. The question I had though was, is this water supposed to simulate the living waters of Mandalore? Because if the answer is yes, then we need to talk about Din Djarin's redemption. and how much of a crock this is on the armorer's part.
I
And
see
so
what you did there. How much of a crock?
Exactly right. But yes, I mean that was another thing I had though, was like when they were coming together, like is the baptism supposed to simulate the waters? Or is this something else that they were going to do? We don't know there was a baptism. She just had the cup. Maybe he was going to drink it under the helmet. I don't know. This is how you work with under the helmet. Let's just practice. I don't know.
Right. I had it I have it literally in the show notes as a baptism. It reminded me of a baptism because he's standing in the water, right? He's going to be, usually with baptisms, it's like it's the parents or yourself or whoever finally committing themselves 100% to whatever it is, right? And all that looked very symbolic to me. I like this. It's a good question, like whether or not that was supposed to be, hey, we can't get to those waters, so let's just use this muddy water that's infested with large crocodiles. But whatever, I mean, whatever they can make work and whatever they can find.
Well, and that's kind of the question I have though, is if we can simulate that for this christening aspect of it, and this cleansing of your old spirits and renewing of your commitment, and you're now the embodiment of the Mandalorians to kind of pull on those themes. Why would we not have something similar for redemption? Or is it that because you actually sinned after all of this? No, we have no flexibility on what you're allowed to do, and so you have to go and find this other particular pool. But the idea is that the idea is a recommitment, right?
Yeah.
And that type of thing, and maybe that there's some sort of quest that goes along with it too. Because if the pools were there and in place, then why would it be that big of a deal? Type of thing. Except that they're unattainable at this point, and so it's almost like a penalty when we know you can't do it. So therefore, you need to go do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was just a little bit inconsistent there of what I'm like. I don't understand the armorer's perspective here about what she's trying to accomplish. If we're able to accommodate this one scenario, but we've not come up with another way to accommodate the other scenarios too.
Yeah. I know, I get what you're saying. It seems like hypocritical of them to allow one but not the other, given that Mandalore is inaccessible for either of them, right? If that is, I think the devil's in the details in terms of what the ceremony means and what exactly they're doing. But you're right; it's a good point. There, just quickly on some of the other banners that I caught. There was I wrote them all down here. There's actually a few of them that popped up, but there's where are they at? Oh, here they are, Clan Eldar. So that's the wolf one. So there's one that looks like a wolf. It doesn't have the mane underneath. It's just got it looks like a wolf's head. That's Clan Eldar. We saw that in Star Wars Rebels. There's also the Crusaders, which looks like that circle one in the background. You can see it. And the Crusaders is like an old group of Mandalorians from like the old Republic era, which is interesting that they brought that one in. There's another one that I'm going to call the Wolfpack clan, because it looks like the Wolfpack symbol that we've seen in Star Wars before, but only it's now on a banner for the Mandalorians. So it was a kind of a mixed hodgepodge of different things that either we've seen before, either in Star Wars Rebels officially as canon, mixed in with some other ones as well. But the point is, they do have a lot of different clans that are coming together. And my gut tells me we're going to see some of these same symbols probably in much larger glory once we get to Mandalore, where we're going to see more of those folks kind of running around. So I'm going to talk about Ragnar real quick, the kid, because it feels like they did focus on him quite a bit. And I know it was for kind of the dupe purposes of, it's really not a flashback. But I just wondered, like, he seems like a character that potentially could play a larger role either in this series or another series. And I know it's probably too early to say or too early to guess, but I could see somewhere where they go with him, maybe joining Grogu and Mando at some point. Maybe he falls in line with, I don't know. I was thinking, I went really far out and thought, it would be really cool for Boba Fett to finally have his own son. And what if that son turns out to be somebody like this kid? I know, like, Jonesy's already struggling because he hates when I talk about this stuff, but I already know what you think. Lauren, what do you think about those things? Do you want to see him more?
I think it's definitely possible considering how much we saw of him in that scene. And I mean, like, I noticed how when the armorer fell, he ran to go help the armorer. And there was some time spent. There was like a few seconds that we lingered on that. So I could see them trying to establish him as someone that we might see again in the future.
Yeah. Jonesy, what about you?
No, I don't see the need to go back to this character at all. I think it was important to see him go help the armor because that's what they do. I mean, that's the way, right? So it's expected, and it was good that he was willing to put his life on the line in order to do it. but it was also a way to set up Paz Vizsla coming in and people to be worried that we were going to have Paz Vizsla get eaten. And so that was one way too. So he can go save the boy, and then things just kind of work out that way. But this is going to be a character that we're going to go back and revisit. It's always possible, I think, with Filoni and Favreau and company. But is it something that has any merit to it at this point? Probably not. It's just something to keep track of.
They said the same thing about Grogu. That's all I'm saying. All right, so the crocodile comes in.
Hold on, we did not say that about Grogu.
There were some people that were saying,
"Oh, really?"
Yeah, they were saying the kid's not going to be around. It's not going to last.
There was a lot of question about whether he would, and I think we probably questioned what all they would do with it, but that's been answered now. So yeah, fair enough.
The crocodile Mandy. Okay, so this croc thing, it was interesting. It did some rolls. It was very similar to that. I thought it was what it did do is allowed us to see all of the Mandalorians kind of come together, use all their weapons. They had the flamethrowers, they had the grenades, and whatever else they could use on that. I was fully expecting when the armor ran out, I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to go like Legolas on this thing and like run up its side and like take it out with the hammer. And none of that really happened. But then I thought, okay, well, realistically, she's trying to rebuild this group. And probably more important is for her to save those that are in need, which is whatever the drowning one was doing. But it was kind of unfortunate that we didn't get to see her kind of shine in this moment. But, you know, that's probably better left for Mando.
I was also like, just can we all go back in the cave? Is that an
That's
option?
exactly.
Well,
I had that same thought.
I did too. But would you?
Mandalorians don't run away from a fight, though.
Exactly.
I get that part
yes.
too, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was.
But I'm also like, did we put explosives on the top of the armor? What happened to the belly? Have you not fought a crate dragon before? Come on.
Not many people have. And then, and then it felt like Vizsla was going to have a moment there where he kind of like swooped in and was about to like shoot I don't know what he was going to do. He was pretty much ineffective, but I just thought it was funny that he got upstaged yet again by Mando swooping in the Razor Ring N1 Starfighter, whatever we're calling it, blowing up that thing. And that's that last scene where he finally lands. Because you think about it, I mean, this is the guy they extradited and said, or well, not extradited, but they exiled, right? And said, you're no longer part of us. And he's the one that just happens to come in and save them, which I thought had to be egg on their face. And they all had to kind of just eat crow there for a little bit. But that coupled with the look of, finally the baby just pops up in the middle of the bubble and, kind of thumbs up thing. Hey, it's us. I thought it was a really good way, very cute way to kind of end everything, at least all the action there. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I loved the appearance of Grogu at the very end. Just kind of like, we're back, and also the baby's back too.
Yeah, right. He didn't go anywhere. He's still here.
Yeah, like Din just kind of looked at him like, hey guys, remember me?
Yeah. Well, there's, and it speaks to, there's a couple of moments in here where I felt like there's that line of we're stronger together. That's one of the lines that Din Djarin says in the trailer. And I think we'll hear that at some point. It's probably when we get to Mandalore, trying to bring everybody together. But it does speak to that, right? It's the first sign of this idea that, yeah, we may all be apart, but together we're better. Maybe it's just we're stronger as long as Mando's with us. That's probably more accurate. But I think the idea is still there. I want to quickly
that probably sticks Paz in the biscuits a little bit.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Just quickly, I want to just go to the chat because someone's joined us with us who has normally not been with us. I don't think he or she's ever been here or they've never been here. Says, hi, I'm usually working when you guys are streaming in Queensland, Australia. Have been a listener on Spotify for a year or so. Always like to hear your angle on things. Thanks and keep it up. That's from Beckham Halliday. So Beckham Halliday, I think.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Sorry, I know it's probably late there. Or early. Either way. Okay. So baby in the bubble, then we got this whole idea that there's, he's got to go down this path of redemption. He's an apostate. He brings out this relic that
this was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. We don't really get the backstory on it, which is fine. I don't think we need that. In fact, I like that idea that it just somehow he got it. But I think this does help speak to the amount of time that passed. And we kind of gloss over it. I want to come back to that just really quickly here. If you've not been keeping up on current events, Jon Favreau is doing his really best to screw everybody's heads up right now because he keeps coming out. Like he had said originally that it had been 2 years, essentially that it'd been 2 years that he had trained with Luke, right? Grogu. And then he walked that back. he tried to explain it, and it made even more people confused. And people, I think, still have this wrong. The best way I understand it, and the way I'm taking this is that no, he did not train with Luke for 2 years. I think that would be absurd, right? But he probably did train in real time. So meaning about a year, maybe longer than a few months, which I think initially, it was just a few months, right? It's probably closer to about a year, but I don't think it's not 2 years and it's not a couple months. It's somewhere in there. I think the way I would summarize this is it's really not important, right? It's storytelling. Becca said it from Tarkin's Top Shelf. She posted something on Twitter today that I thought was really good. Basically, that it is one of the more powerful elements of Star Wars. Really, is just kind of the way time works, whether you like it or not. You think about Luke Skywalker. How long did he train with Yoda? We've gone back and forth many, many times over the years about how long that was and how effective it was and all of that. So at the end of the day, I don't think it really makes a difference. I think if someone said, oh, he'd been training for 5-10 years, then I think we'd have a lot of questions about why, and how does that fit into the timeline. But if we're in the 1 to 2 year ballpark, I don't think it really makes a difference. And I think we probably should just move on, even though Favreau probably will come out and try to explain it further.
Yeah, Alex over at Star Wars to Explain had a similar type of thing. He made a video about it too. And absolutely agree with both of them. I think this just doesn't matter. I mean, it's a certain amount of time. I think we're seeing the time passing in other ways too. When we go back to Navarro and we see what is, and they make a comment when they're on the streets of Navarro, just the progression we've seen, that doesn't happen overnight. That happens over time. And so these stories, time passing in Star Wars is always a bit of a mystery anyway. It sometimes it works pretty well. Other times you scratch your head. But, I think on this one that anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half, all kind of works and makes sense. It doesn't detract from our ability to enjoy it.
Right.
So let's just kind of hop off of the ride, understand that, yeah, there's a little bit of flexibility here. Jon Favreau's doing interviews too. He's doing all this off the top of my head. He's not working from a script, nothing like that. Right. So give the guy a break a little bit. Yeah, his original comments, I think, were actually taken a little bit out of context anyway, or they were overblown for what he actually said. And so I think if you go out there and if you actually read the comments rather than listen to it, if you read the original comments, you're like, okay, this was taken a very specific Star Wars fan kind of way that wasn't necessarily going to be 100% accurate in the first place. But
yeah.
But anyway, he tried to walk it back. I think Variety was trying to say, hey, you set the internet on fire. I'm like, well, wasn't that?
He's like, what? I did? He had like no
why?
idea that he had done that.
Yeah, exactly. Again, they're just trying to help people get excited and understand where we're coming from. And I think at the end of the day, Favreau was like, just watch the show.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was kind of clear that to him it didn't matter either. Like, why do you care? This is not really important. You're focusing on the wrong thing here. But I think so. The reason I brought up the time aspect now is because that relic, right? Some time had to have passed for him to have come across that. Maybe he was back visiting Pelimato, which we'll talk about more here in a little bit. But maybe he was visiting her, found the relic. It just kind of keeps adding to the story that some time has passed. From that, we can gather now that the surface either not. I don't think it's completely, but there are probably portions of it that have been crystallized because of fusion and whatever's happened with radiation. There's the poisoning.
This goes back to the Book of Boba Fett comment, actually. If you remember, Boba Fett actually said that the surface is glass.
Yeah.
Right. So it was good to see what he meant by that. So I think this was an important connection back to what he had said that said, okay, here's what we're talking about.
Right.
Like this has happened. And then you get the armor's interpretation or her comments about what that actually looks like, fusion rays or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But again, this is what we're talking about, that the planet has been altered, and here's what it looks like. It looks like Krypton.
Yep. Does look like Krypton. I think some of it is propaganda too, right? It's probably in the interest of the Empire to propagate this idea that there's no reason for anybody to return, right? That it is a wasteland and it's poisonous and horrible things are there, right? It scares off the primitives and it scares off the people like the Watch or the children of the Watch who are going to buy into that sensationalism of it all, right? Because that's just kind of who they are. So I think it's in their best interest to do that. I think the reality is going to be very different when Din Djarin shows up and realize, okay, not all of it's this way, and we've been lied to, right? For that reason, to kind of keep us all away so we cannot come together. So on the burden of proof here, so the idea is he's going to go to the planet and he's going to bathe in the waters. So Lauren, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. I'm having, and if you don't have any ideas around this is fine too. But I'm struggling to kind of come up with what would that even look like? Like he's going to get there. I mean, there's no witnesses. What's the proof look like? How is the armorer going to know that he successfully went through that, right? I don't really get how this is going to happen. And I'm sure they'll do it through storytelling. I've got some ideas, but how they get around that. But I just don't understand why or how that would even happen.
I don't think that there is a way to prove it. To me, it seemed like the fact that he's going through the trouble to keep coming back and asking her about being redeemed, to me, that seemed like she could infer from that he was serious about it, because that's a lot to go through if you're not even going to do it. Like, if he doesn't care about the religion anymore, then why keep coming back and asking if you can be redeemed and just to get turned away every time? So to me, it seemed like the fact that he was going through the trouble to even try to figure out how to go, and he's even talking about going, seemed to me like he was serious about it.
Yeah. You have any thoughts, Jonesy, around it?
Yeah, he's gonna take a selfie at the living
Okay.
pool, and he's just gonna do a little tagline at the living waters.
The living one.
I mean,
Is it an honor system thing?
Well, I think there's probably something down there that he can take as a memento or something that would demonstrate to the armor, this is the only place I can get this artifact or this rock or whatever it is, right? That he's already got a piece of it. I think gives him credibility that, hey, he's looking into this. Like Lauren was saying, he's serious about it. And I think that was the only reason why he went back, was saying, look, this is possible. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I do this, I'm back in, right? We're good.
Mhm.
Exile's over. We're cleared and ready to go here. So I think that at least gives him credibility, and he would be able to find something that would be relevant, that would resonate with her, because clearly she's seen something of all of this. The living waters, though, and the Bo-Katan comments later on, we're not sure if this is actually a real thing anyway, that any of these people living have even seen or experienced before,
Right.
or if it is just lost to time, lost to the mythology of their culture, right? They're just these stories, or if it's something real about it. So presumably it would be unique enough, though, that if he were able to take something, then it would demonstrate that he was there. So I think there's some truth to what he would, he'll figure it out.
Yeah. There's Alex chiming in, says he'll smell clean considering they've never removed that nasty helmet. So smell alone, right? Coming back from the waters, having been bathed, I think is probably a good sign as well. So
Does he have to bathe with his armor on?
I don't know. That's a good question. We should do a Patreon show.
Bathing
Deep
actually
dive
look
into that.
What's bathing actually look like to a Mandalorian?
Well, and then here, right on point, Jeff's coming in saying, I got to say, making the hook of your show, will Pedro Pascal jump naked into the water, is not a bad way to build a show in 2023. So I think a lot of people are thinking this, man. I think we're all in the same thought here.
But he'll leave the helmet on.
Asking the real questions.
Yes, asking the real deep questions about this. I had this later, and since just kind of, we can put a cap on it with this, but how do you prove that? I have a theory. Well, it's not a far-fetched theory, because I think we saw it from the trailers, but I have a feeling, man, Bo-Katan will be there. And if she goes through the trials with him, even just as an observer, that's enough for she could probably testify that, yeah, he went through that as one way.
Does that mean anything to anyone, though?
What's that?
Does Bo-Katan's word mean anything to any of the children of the Watch?
I don't know.
I just
probably
don't think I don't think she has any credibility regardless. I don't know if that helps him or if that really probably hurts him.
Yeah. The other theory would be, maybe there's somebody down there, right? An old, like a Christopher Lloyd, or I don't know. He can be anybody really, but
a mythosaurus.
There's some kind of a mentor that you have to meet up with, and they kind of set you down the path of the trials. Now, this sounds very cheesy. It sounds very 80s, but you know what? This is Jon Favreau, and we've already got a lot of that stuff from him in this series. So I can see where, there's somebody there that kind of administers the trials or administers the bathing. Jeez, that sounds terrible. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's somebody down there who's very, who looks with a lot of respect at them as they're bathing.
Wow. I didn't think it'd get any weirder, and then you found a way.
I'm just digging a hole here.
With a lot of respect.
A lot of respectfully looking at him as he's there with only a helmet on.
So basically, this is another Indiana Jones reference where they're going to come across the night.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you for bailing me out. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about during the trials in The Last Crusade. Something similar to that, right? Okay. Well, now that we've got those images in our head.
Anyways,
whoa, what show is this? What's the spicy meter at right now, Lauren?
Oh, Oh no! Don't even go there.
Yeah, there's your buddy chiming in there in the chat, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk about something super important because from here he kind of gets his orders, or he basically says, "Look, I'm going to go do this, whether you think it's possible or not, whether you think I'm a fool or not." I mean, similar to what Bo-Katan is saying. I mean, she didn't call him a fool, but essentially it's what they're both saying to him: is you're foolish for even going and doing this, right? So they're kind of on the same page in that regard. But he says, "I'm going to go do it anyway," and she's like, "Well, that's the way. Good luck, you know. Vaya con Dios, you're not going to make it."
I do like that we get the sad puppy dog eyes from Grogu in this moment. Like, he can do it, right?
Yeah.
You'll forgive him, right? I mean, it was
Yep.
just little sad puppy dog eyes.
Real concerned child looks coming from him there at the bottom of that table. Did you see his little chair? He has a little seat.
Okay.
It's
And
cute.
also, he didn't say "yep." By the way,
I know it did sound like yep in the trailer. I think.
oh, it
but-
definitely sounds like "yep." But yeah, the subtitles definitely say that he what was it? He gurgles
gargles or
curiously.
gurgles.
Gurgles curiously
Whatever.
instead of
gurgles.
just "yep." I don't know. It didn't look like a curious "yep," but whatever.
So he stole to say something, right?
We
Somewhere.
may be a few decades away from that. So.
Oh, what a Debbie Downer you are, man! You guys are just all over the show tonight. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But the
So
baby noises are super cute in the meantime. So
they are like that's what I'm saying. Like even just his little ambient noises that you can hear him saying and doing are so freaking cute. Okay, so let's talk about probably my favorite part of this, right? The hyperspace. When they're going through hyperspace, aesthetically, it's very cool. You can make. I'm going to say this was probably the volume in effect here, and just to have been in the room of the volume while this is running and the hyperspace is going by would have been just amazing to have seen or been witness to. But the more important thing is, you know, when he looks over, he sees the Purrgil, right? The space whales that were first established in Star Wars Rebels. I got emotional like watching this one scene. It was the music, it was the blue color, and then I started thinking like, wow, we probably I don't think we're going to see the Purrgil in this series probably at all, right? Definitely not in the season. However, I do think that they are kind of planting seeds for like Ahsoka or, you know, maybe Skeleton Crew. I don't know, somewhere down they are going to. It's kind of like the weapon thing. If they show you the weapon, they're going to use the weapon. If they show you the Purrgil, they're going to use the Purrgil. I just don't think it's going to happen in this series. But what really got me kind of thinking was I love the Purrgil so much. And I know Mike Rondu just freaking hates it. He's already commented on it. He's already messaged me about this. But I love them so much. And I think what it does, though, for the general audiences is they're finally going to see something that's so out of their norm. Like for most general audiences, you go into hyperspace, there's a lot of cool blue lights, but it's such a mystery. And here they're now being introduced to a being, an entity in Star Wars that can travel in and out of hyperspace at will, right? That's kind of like their ocean, if you will, right? And I think it just kind of really is going to expand the minds and certainly the lore of a lot of the general audiences by introducing the Purrgil later down the road.
Exactly. If you need any confirmation that we are going to get Ahsoka and company and something to tie this into Rebels and maybe even World Between Worlds, all these other things, I mean, here's your sign. I mean, you just kind of front and center right off the bat.
Yep. I have a theory. I love
No way. You're
Yeah,
kidding
no,
me.
seriously, I do. So here's what I was thinking though too. The last thing I'll say. So there's not a character that has ever looked into hyperspace and seen the Purrgil, right? They've been known, they've been talked about in Rebels, they talked about in great length, but I don't know that anybody's ever seen them. So I thought, why is it that Grogu has the ability? Like, is this some kind of force ability that he's able to see them, right? As they're traveling through hyperspace, and I wonder if, like, at some point, Ahsoka, you know, as part of like, how do we get to him? We've got to contact the Purrgil. We've got to figure out how to make contact with them or whatever that is. Maybe they come back to Grogu, and there's a lot to get through here. Okay, don't get me wrong, but if it is kind of a special ability that he has, then he would kind of be key to leading to Ezra or finding out their last known whereabouts. So it would be a way to kind of tie it back, or maybe Grogu has a guest appearance in Ahsoka because of this kind of thing. But I just thought it was interesting that there's never been a character it's never been spoken about that how these things just show up in hyperspace. You got to think a lot of people sit and spend a lot of time in hyperspace and no one ever talks about this.
Well, but not everybody's looking at hyperspace from the sides. Usually they're looking at just through a porthole in the front. I know I just poo-pooed all over your parade yet again.
No, I don't. I mean, look. The number of people per day traveling. There's not everybody sits there and looks forward. I'm saying there's got to be people that are just looking out to the side. Cruise ships, cruise liners, that sort of thing while it's traveling through hyperspace. I just, I don't. It's just interesting that they did it. But,
or they just wanted to show you a space whale.
Maybe.
I could see it coming up again in the future. I'll side with you, Albert.
Thank you.
I can see it coming up again. Sorry, Jonesy. I think it's like you said, the fact that they dropped it in there, I don't think we'll find out very quickly about it, but I do think it'll come up again.
Steph says, I was so excited for the whales. Dale says, definitely foreshadowing. Heron knew all about them and didn't like them. Yep. I'm sure there's probably horror stories about the Purgle, like coming and ramming into ships or taking ships and, kind of like old sailor wise tales.
Pirate whales.
Getting in the way.
Yep. Yeah. Jeff, visually, it was a beautiful way to handle the Purgle. I know we'll probably get a practical or special effect at some point, but I really love how they did it here.
I do like how they did it, though. It was very subtle how they came in, and you're like, holy crap, they're actually going to show this. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, especially that long shot. It was not long shot, but that was shot they had.
That was something I don't think we've ever had before. Was an actual pulled away shot where the ship is just this tiny little piece, and you do get the full landscape of hyperspace as the background. That was very unique. That was unexpected. Yeah. We've had it from kind of these off angles in the front and the back, showing the motion of it all, but just showing it as an ocean was a very neat effect. That was just a really cool way of showing that. And again, that they go in these herds or whatever their grouping mechanism is called.
It gives you a good sense of how enormous they are too. Seeing it side by side like that.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, they literally attached themselves to a Star Destroyer, and they took up most of that Star Destroyer when they pulled away into hyperspace. So they get pretty big. The takeaway, the big lead here though, is if you notice Baby Grogu, he jumps under Mando's arms because he's scared.
Well, we answered the question that we had from a while back. Like, how does he get out of the bubble? Oh, he just has a little. He's got a little
ladder, a little chute.
Yeah, he just got a little tunnel.
What if he built a slide in there for him?
That would be so cute.
Slides down.
Why do you have to do these things, Albert? I don't understand.
It's for Lauren. Okay.
Thank you. It's working.
It's working.
I eat it up.
She's like, yes, that's right. It should be a slide. And there's music playing in the background. He says, Gary says, never thought about that. So this means hyperspace isn't a tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah, not technically, I guess.
Not technically.
High Republic has explained a little teeny tiny sliver of how all that works. It's an interdimensional portal, effectively.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
Yeah. Okay, let's, so they get to Navarro, gem of the Outer Rim, as it's described a little bit later. The key takeaways here, it's an important trade anchor from the Outer Rim hyperlane ports. It's the official trade spur of the Hydian Way, the Hydian Way came up, I want to say in the Clone Wars or Rebels, I forget. But the way I would summarize it is it's like a major highway for the Outer Rim. Like there's only a few places that there's a lot of traffic coming in and out. And Navarro just seems to be, strategically positioned such that they are benefiting from the amount of traffic, right? That's kind of coming in and out of the Outer Rim there.
And Tatooine is pissed that not everybody's going to want to go to Tatooine now.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, Tatooine. We'll be back.
Your time will come.
Yeah, probably next week.
There's we get reintroduced to High Magistrate Karga. I thought it was funny that he kept insisting that people call him High Magistrate.
Is Grief Karga's his ego out of control all of a sudden, way more so than it ever has been?
Yeah, probably.
He probably worked very hard for his accomplishments, though. So
he probably has. Yeah,
I think if he wants to be called High Magistrate, we'll just give him one.
Well, I don't know about that because later on he makes a comment he goes, it almost sounds like I didn't do any of this. All the people built everything here, right?
Yeah, he did give some credit to the people. You're absolutely right.
Oh, maybe that's why. Maybe he's a man of the people and he really did it, but he's, showing his grace by saying they did it. And I don't know.
Maybe they all did it. And, he's leading them, but they're working too. They're all doing it together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're all working hard at the same time.
He's also a salesman though. And he's trying to get Mando to stick around too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is. I mean, I'm sure if you think about it, his role probably is a lot of that negotiation and, elbow rubbing and butt
Well, I mean,
kissing.
to his credit, someone had to go and do all of this legwork to take it from the scum hole that it was and make it into this really. I mean, God, I mean, it is the gem of the Outer Rim. I mean, when you just look at it, it is very different just on approach, right? And
Mhm.
then when you land in the city, it's very light, very bright, very vibrant. You know, it's a place that you feel safe at for the most part until pirates
Yeah.
don't understand it's a school, not a bar. Don't understand why it's such a hard
I
thing
have
to
a theory on that too.
Of course you do.
Why that was such a point of contention for them. And it has nothing to do with the story. Okay, so more on that later. Okay, so we go into Grief Karga's office and we got to see Grogu spinning in the chair using the Force. That was cute. We got to see him steal one of the space Skittles or whatever the heck it was on there on his desk,
Yeah.
Grief Karga's desk.
I was hoping it was gonna be like a red hot and he would like, whoa.
Right, yeah. You don't know what you're eating
Reese's
there, buddy.
Pieces.
Yeah,
Reese's
it's like
Pieces.
it's like one of those super spicy Cheetos or whatever they're called.
Yeah. I think that's what they're called. Yeah. But I think what more than anything, really what they were trying to show is that he does have more control over the Force, which I think is partly what we're going to get. Like we talked about this in the final
He's
hype show.
Casually abusing the Force, like the path of the open hand is so
Right.
concerned about.
I mean, they're just falling over. People are dying. Like according to the open hand, and you have to be caught up on the High Republic to understand this, but every time he does that, like there's somebody just dying, like healing over in somewhere in the universe, right?
You have to bring balance if you're
You
going
gotta-
to
it's
abuse
just-
the Force. It's going to get its way.
Yep. Stealing space Skittles and kids are dying somewhere. So he's just as evil as anyone else. That's an inside joke for you High Republic fans. So we get to
Worth it for the candy.
it's worth it for the candy, exactly. And so this is where he's kind of petitioning Grief Karga's like, hey, you should stay here, retire with your son, call Omera. I've got a big tract of land out there. It's, you can benefit from it, et cetera, et cetera. And he finally gives him news of like, no, this is where he gets the line of like, hey, a lot's happening. It's complicated. And, we're back together and I've got a mission. Sorry, I got to get going on this. So they're interrupted by the droid who tells them we've got pirates in the courtyard. Okay, so we go to the pirates in the courtyard. And this is where we meet up with Vane and company. And these guys report up to Pirate King Gorian Shard, who's a hijacker and a ransomer. I don't know if that's a word. It's not. It wouldn't take it. But that's what he's known for. And so I kind of was hung up on this. Like, it seemed like they were so insistent about going into this one room, even though it's like a school. Like, dude, there's no liquor there. You're not understanding. Like, you can look right inside the door, like, and this may be the same room that was was it the school that was in season 2 that Grogu went to and stole the blue macaroons with the Force, right? It's probably that same one, right? So if you look in, it looks like a school, but
it's the exact same one. Yeah.
Okay. So they were super insistent about going in there and ordering drinks or having a drink. And I didn't understand, like, why are they doing this? I'll give you my whack theory in just a second, but do you guys have any thoughts as to why this went on longer than it should have?
I thought they were just being deliberately difficult because they were frustrated. So that's the impression that I got.
I agree. I think this is what they know. This is what it should be. And if we're not going to get our way, we're going to throw a fight. I think part of it, though, was also the history with Grief Karga, that he built the bar with his spoils from a run that they did with his boss. And I think some of it is just this idea that he's now trying to be bigger and better than everybody else. He's wearing all these fancy clothes, and they're still pirates. And he's turned his back on the way that things were. And yeah, to Lauren's point, all of that just being petulant children about the whole thing of, ironically. But yeah, I mean,
They
because the
didn't
thing
want him
is,
to
like,
move on.
exactly, he's offering them a drink in his office. It's probably the good stuff, and they just say no. They don't even entertain it at all. I'd be like, heck yeah, let's go live that good life. Let's do it.
Yeah, Steph's probably right on here. She says the pirates reminded me of bullies that were just trying to exert their dominance. I think that's really what it was at the end of the day. I mean, it was a way for them to kind of have the fight.
Well, to show that, hey, you're not better than us. I don't care about all your fancy stuff. You're not better than we are.
Yeah. I think there's probably more here. I don't want to put too much into it because it's still early, but the pirates themselves, I think, are going to come back. And I don't know if it's going to be in Mando, but they did spend a lot of time focusing on them. And they spent a lot of time focusing on this school for whatever reason. And I won't say one theory because it's kind of spoiler, so I can't say that. But I will say that I think the pirates are probably going to play a larger role again in this series or another. Skeleton Crew probably feels like it'd be the right thing because I can't see Ahsoka getting mixed up with pirates much
That's what I
in
was
that series.
thinking.
But I don't know this character. What was his name? King Gordian Shard. Gorian Shard, like he seems like a pretty well thought out character. I mean, he wasn't just kind of like a throwaway Klaatuan or a throwaway, Weequay of some sort, right? This is a very unique species. I don't think we've ever seen. I know people have been calling him Swamp Thing. He looks kind of like Swamp Thing. His ship has a very unique design. They spent a lot of time with that as well. It wasn't a throwaway pirate ship. So whatever was going on here,
they did multiple of the drawings at the very end of the show too.
Good point. Right. So they spent some time in the concept design or concept parts of it. So whatever it is, at some point, I think this may come up a little bit later. And if it doesn't, that's fine. But I think for sure we will get these pirates again, either in this series or another series, or they're establishing piracy as kind of like a threat that's starting to resurface now that there's been this power vacuum with the Empire leaving. And we've talked about that in a few other episodes here about, who's coming to power now that the Empire is gone. There's a lot of opportunity, especially for some folks like pirates and somebody like this who seems to have a pretty big, I'm not going to call it an empire, but certainly a fleet of ships.
Well, they have a gap right now too, right? With no marshal and no real way of enforcing. I mean, Grief Karga is trying to show strength at this point as well to make sure he doesn't do it. But now they're aware there's a weakness potentially. And so that could be problems for him, for the immediate term.
Yeah. Well, and it could be that too. I mean, there's part of it is a way to kind of explain, because a little bit later, he's, as soon as they're done with this, we'll get it down here, but the whole Cara Dune thing comes up, right? And the need for a marshal in the area. So they have the showdown. This was very throwback to Western kind of showdowns again, right? He pulls his little cloak back or whatever it is and shows that he's got a piece hanging there on his side. If you look at the battle, when they actually shoot the pirates, every one of them got shot in the arm, like in the shoulder. But then later he says like they're dead. And so I don't know, this is
typical for Star Wars. Like stormtroopers get shot in the shoulders all the time, or in the arm or in the side, and they're dead every single time. I don't understand why it's a thing, but it is.
I wonder if it's just like a censorship thing, right? Or a censor type thing where they can't show somebody get shot in the chest 4 times in cold blood versus shot in the shoulder.
They'll show Fennec Shand like pop someone like sideways right in the middle of the forehead. I don't understand. I think it's just convenience. Like with the way that the acting is and the way the gun is pointed when they shoot it, like, well, okay, you got to line it up a certain way. It's everybody gets shot. It's fine.
Well, I thought, and then later on when we get to the space battle thing with the asteroids, I thought it was because they all had lived, right? And they had shoulder wounds, but then it's explained that, hey, you took out my men, 4 of my guys. So, okay, well, they're dead then. So yeah, I don't know. It's just weird that it still continues to happen when it just seems inconsistent, I think is what you were saying. So.
Well, what gave me pause was the fact that they let that last guy go at all. I mean, I realized that they had to have them come back later, but it was just the way that they were like, we'll let him go. I kind of did have to like not overthink about that, because I felt like it felt a little bit out of place.
At least Din Djarin asked the question, you sure you want to do that? I mean, at least it wasn't like, that makes sense. It was like, well, okay, well, at least question and challenge it. So I was glad that they at least added that in there, because I was thinking the same. I was like, why? Just.
Yeah.
I think if he had like escaped or something, that would have made more sense to me. But them letting him go on purpose, I was kind of like, well.
But I think the other side of it, though, is Grief Karga doesn't want to be looked at as a murderer in his town. I guess it may be one way you could look at it, that he showed mercy. Now he probably should have imprisoned him or something like that, or just captured him. That would have made a lot more sense. But knowing this Pirate King guy, that probably would have invited a whole other set of issues anyway. So Karga probably just weighed the odds. It's like, oh, well, I'll try to send a message this way, because either way I'm kind of in a tough spot. So we'll try this one way.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, so part of it too is he was trying to send a message, right? I mean, I guess he wasn't expecting, well, he wouldn't have cared either way, but he wasn't expecting them to be waiting for Mando to try to leave the system, but he was trying to send a signal to the Pirate King there, Gorian Shard, and let him know that, like you said, Navarro is no longer friendly to pirates. So he was the messenger. He was showing grace that there could have, hey, Shard, I could have killed all your guys, but I'm sending this one back with the message saying you're no longer wanted here. What he's really done, though, is I think he's kicked up he's kicked over an ant mound, right? I think this is going to be a bigger problem for him, and a problem that I don't know that he's in the best position to start. Like you said, he has no marshal. I don't know who's enforcing law. It seems like everyone's pretty civil right now, but suddenly if there's a lot of pirates showing up, who's going to contend with that? How does he pull together a militia, and who's leading that militia? I mean, it's going to have to be him temporarily.
You said it earlier. This is still a lawless time. You're outside the bounds of the New Republic. They don't ever show up, even if they are in town. So you can't rely on them. So you're left defending yourself, and he's in a vulnerable position. So I agree with you. But he was kind of in a bad spot either way. As soon as they pulled arms and stuff, it was, either way was not going to be great for him. So I guess you just roll the dice with this way, and then see how it goes.
Now, this is pure theory and speculation, but we know from the trailer that we see the Mandalorians, right? Like Paz Vizsla and some others walking through the town of Navarro, and they're shooting. So
they're coming
maybe
back.
they're called upon to help out, and they're running off the pirates at that point.
Thinking.
Yeah. So it's not the last that again we've seen of them, but yeah, he didn't do himself any favors by going in. I mean, what was he going to do though? Too. I mean, he tried everything he could, right? So.
And it was outside of school, so he had to get that situation to stop quickly. So.
Right. Just think about the faces of those children as they watch these 4 people lay there dead right outside their school door.
They're like,
why didn't you set the stun? Set the stun.
Exactly.
I've been watching the Bad Batch for months, and they stun everybody.
What kind of lesson are we teaching the kids here?
Exactly. Things were more civilized back in the Order 66 days.
I know. Take Navarro back. Okay, so, all right, so then we get to the needs of the mini, which, okay, so he explains Cara Dune is gone. She's now part of Special Forces. This is exactly what we talked about. We said they were going to do this. I think this is the right way to do it. I know some people are like, nope, they shouldn't even mention her. And what I would say to you is like, yeah, I get it, but now that's personal feelings getting in the way of the story. And if you think about it from Mando's perspective and Grief Karga's perspective, they're not going to let somebody like Cara Dune just go, oh, we're not going to even bring her up. He's going to bring her up, right? One of them is going to bring her up because she had such a pivotal role in their fictional lives that it would be an injustice and it would be disrespectful for them and the character, not the actress, but the character to not have said something. So I like the way they handled it. They didn't belabor it. They just said, oh, she went on to Special Forces. Things are better. She's moved on. We move on. The story goes on, right? So they got that out of the way. We learned that Gideon needs a trial. So he's on some kind of, he's going to be on some tribunal here soon.
Yeah, war tribunal. So typical what we kind of expected, war crimes.
We think he's going to get away. So do you think it's going to be pre-trial, post-trial? Any thoughts from either of you on how that's going to go down?
I almost wonder if the trial is going to, like, if nothing's going to come out of it, because that would be a strong testament to the ineffectiveness of the New Republic.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good point. I mean, that would be some really ineffective stuff if that were really the case.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
it would be a bit extreme.
Well,
maybe you talk about completely delegitimizing your government. That'd be one way to do it. I mean, with no justification for something like that. But I mean
he's such a high profile war criminal at this point, right? I mean, we assume that he's got a history and everybody knows who Moff Gideon is, right? Okay, so that aside, if he was put on trial and somehow he was let go, or the charges were such that he was able to kind of walk away in some kind of a reasonable time, then the whole thing is probably fixed, right? He could have somebody that's sitting on there as one of the judges, or we don't even know what that looks like, but maybe he has friends there, right, or something that to help pull strings. I think he's probably going to be tried, and I think at some point he probably will be just broken out of jail or on the way to whatever facility, prison that they're going to put him in. He gets broken out, and I think this would help. Kind of what Lauren was saying, like that would then explain why reinforce what Mando says, or whoever it was that said that the New Republic's a joke. Like they really can't do things right, that they allow somebody like Moff Gideon to just slip through their fingers when they had a chance to put him away forever. So, okay. I thought you were going to say something, Jones. That's what I want to mute. But, so yeah, I think either way, I think he's going to get out. And then the big shocker, big surprise was Mando saying that he needs that unit. I like the way he was pointing at the unit, the IG-11 unit, or the IG unit, specifically IG-11. and wanting to bring him back. So, Lauren, I'm going to just kind of what I teased earlier on in the show. It looks like we're going to get him back, and I am super excited about it. I'm super happy. I love the dynamic between those two, especially watching that last episode of season 1 between Mando and IG-11. So I think there's a lot of good potential storytelling for the two characters here. But I have a fear that, it does take away from his sacrifice in season 2. But your thoughts, because I know that was a really important moment for you.
I agree, and I did have this thought as well about if his sacrifice would not carry as much weight anymore if he comes back. And honestly, like I do think that it would take away from the sacrifice. But on the other hand, I would like to have more time with that character, so I think it's something I'm willing to let go of. But for me, it would kind of lessen that sacrifice's impact a little bit if he did come
Mhm.
back.
Jonesy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm severely questioning the effectiveness of his self-destruct button, which was in his chest when his chest took very little damage.
Well, yeah, there's that.
I mean, literally the only thing that was damaged on him was what was below the lava, effectively, which I have a little bit. I'm concerned about this because what made IG-11 a great character was Kuiil, and in that whole story there, in the memory and the work that Kuiil did. So on one, I think to kind of where Lauren's probably at here too. On one level, I'm really excited for that legacy to continue on and to have that. But will it feel rehashed? Will it feel genuine? Will it feel the same or have that same? Will it, or like you were saying, Albert, will it just cheapen what we've already had and just feel like a rehash? I'm very concerned that it might in this case. The writers have always, Favreau and Company have always done a pretty good job of not fulfilling that fear. But in this case, it just feels like, why IG-11, to navigate the minds of Mandalore? Like, why him? Is that just to take care of Grogu? Is that really what it is? Like, it's more of the nursemaid type of mentality of it, of knowing you have someone that has your back with that? Or is it just need someone that effective at, potentially killing and blasting their way out of something? So I get that he doesn't really have a whole lot of firepower when it comes to friends anymore, I guess. And IG-11 would be that, but for him to think that's what he needed was a little bit strange that we go back and revisit that.
Yeah.
But so I'm kind of concerned on this too. Of is this going to get drawn out a little bit of how we go back and recover all of this, and that is it going to be the same unit? I don't know, but yeah, happy to see it kind of, but I'm also pretty concerned about this.
Yeah, I mean, if they came back and go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I agree with the concern, but I will say that I think that the reason, like to answer your question of why IG-11 specifically, it made me think back to season 1 when Din and Kuiil are talking about Din's concern for trusting a droid, and Kuiil is like, "Do you trust me? Then trust my work." And so that kind of made me think that that's why, because of Kuiil, that's why this droid is the only option for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I guess the question though is, where's the work? So when he revived him, he went back to his default programming. So if we get a memory thing from like Pelimato, which is kind of seems like where this is all going, maybe how he gets to Tatooine, because Jawas can get anything apparently.
That's
how does this go back to pull Kuiil's work back in? Because I think that's the way I think it's the only way you kind of save this, as long as it doesn't cheapen in the process. But how do we get that back in there so that continues, that legacy continues? Because I'm all for Kuiil's legacy living on and continuing, because I think that character deserved more than getting shot down in the back, by a bunch of crappy scout troopers on speeder bikes,
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think, and I have a lot of all the same questions, like why this droid. I think the way I looked at it was, it's primarily going to be to have somebody there that he can trust to watch Grogu more than anything. The fact that IG-11 is as good as he is when it comes to shooting and killing things and the firepower that he has is just an added bonus, right? On top of that, I think it's to what Lauren said as well. Like, I think he does trust the programming of Kuiil. However, the way the Anzellans, did they ever say his name was Babu Frick, by the way?
No.
They never did, right? I assume it is, because it looks exactly like him. Either way.
Yeah, none of them had a name, yeah.
Yeah. But when the Anzellans are sitting there talking, he says one thing about the memory chip, and the way I walked away with this, and I could be completely wrong. The way I walked away with this was his memories, the design and the personality and all the programming, the wheel of IG-11 is still there. It's still intact. Also there is the default programming. And this particular chip that they need is what allows IG-11 to use the wheel method or mode versus the default. And he's just defaulting now. That's the way I walked away with this. That's probably that's probably way more complicated than it needs to be, and I don't think that's what they're going for at the end of the day. But that's at some point.
This is the comment that like IG no think or something like that. Is that
I didn't write it down.
I think it's something to that effect.
Yeah, like he's not thinking straight, and we need this memory chip, or what was the exact term here? It's down the notes somewhere. Whatever it was, that he needs
a memory circuit.
Yep. Memory circuit, right? And then once they have that memory circuit, then he'll think the way he was originally thinking prior to. All that said, like to what you said earlier, when he blows up in season 2, he's particles. There's nothing left of him. And from a story perspective, I get it. Okay, I'll look past that.
We've vaporized all of the troopers in the area, but somehow he's just got a couple of wrinkled areas on his.
40% of him is still around and intact. And then here's something else too that kind of maybe justify why he's the way he is, or put together the way he is. If you look at his armor, it looks like they welded his pieces together. Like he's patchwork. It's not like a solid piece of whatever he's made of, Beskar or whatever else. It looks like they welded him, which was probably for the reasons of putting him up as a statue. So maybe they did put him together from a bunch of different parts.
Yeah, fair enough.
But who knows? Again, we're getting buried in the details that no one cares about, but the X amount of people that are here with us live and listening to the show. So, okay. But that's why he says he needs that unit. He tries to hotwire him, which I thought was hilarious. Said that's how you would get him going, hotwiring a droid. I have a question, like, why didn't Grief just say, here, no, dude, I mean, I trust you, but I've got Anzellans. They're like right here, they're like right down in that mouse hole in the sewers, and we can get them. Like, they're the best. Why don't we get them first? But, maybe he wanted to give them a shot first, but.
Well, he saved Anzellan lives because the droid would have gone crazy shooting everybody.
Gone crazy, yeah. We did get that Terminator moment. It was like the T-800 or T-1000, or was T-800, I think it was the 800 series, that where it came back to life and was crawling around. It was like a zombie thing. I think there was a few folks in the chat earlier were kind of talking about it. And how did you Jonesy, you like this scene? I think some people were kind of throwing shade at it because it was, too out there. I didn't have a problem with it.
Creepy. I mean, it was creepy, but I think also it goes to that how indestructible these droids can be and how difficult to kill they are until you just drop something on their head. But yeah, it was very zombie-ish. Very much inspired by that type of thing, which was fine. It had a little bit of a horror element to it.
Lauren, how about you? Where was this on the scare threshold for you? Because I know.
Yes, I'm sensitive normally. This was definitely unsettling. But yeah, it made sense though, because of the type of droid that he is. It made sense that it would behave that way if it had lost access to Queel's programming. So it definitely got the point across, that's for sure.
Right. Yep, this all makes sense. And it did allow us to have one of the most awesome dad jokes ever in Star Wars, where he said, now that's using your head. And so I laughed at this joke because Din Djarin's a dad now, so he's got to be able to wield these dad jokes. It just comes with the territory, first off, right? Second, I think it's a cool throwback to the terrible dad jokes and one-liners that 3PO gives us ad nauseum in Attack of the Clones with, I'm beside myself, and I don't even remember what they were, but it was just a string of bad jokes. So I don't know if that was the intent here, but I thought it was okay and fine. Jonesy, any thoughts?
No.
Okay, we'll move on. Let's talk about the Anzellans. So he takes them to the droid smiths of Navarro. Okay, so I'll get this off your chest. I had a question in here about whether this should have been CGI. I'll say this quickly. At the end of the day, I'm fine with the decision because they at least stuck to it and they played it all the way out, and that's fine. Like, it did remind me of Star Wars. Like, it is very Star Warsy to have puppets and have them look kind of, rickety and yeah. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand why it was that. That was the tech that we had back then, and that was as good as it could get. But there is something in the DNA of Star Wars that allows us to see this now, and we don't necessarily always focus on it. But to your point, I think there were maybe some inconsistencies that did pull you out just a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little odd, but I'm with you though. I'm glad they picked one and they stuck with it and just went through the whole scene with it.
Yep.
I really don't have much of a problem with that. Yeah, some of the motions were a little bit herky-jerky. You could say that's the Enzellans because we did get that with Babu Frick as well. And generally okay with that. It was more, my only issue with it really was just that there was mouth moving and no words, or words with no mouth moving. Like there were just, it just seemed out of sync. It just seemed like a really overt miss that really had no, and you could say maybe it was another Anzellan off screen saying things, but it was so loud right there. It was like coming from the one. It just took me out of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think CGI probably would have worked a little bit better in this scenario, just overall from an overall aesthetics type of thing. But I'm with you. I'm glad they picked one and stuck with it and just let the scene be consistent in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish we would have fixed the audio in this one. I think it would have been, my complaint with it actually would have been invalid and probably not brought up at all.
Lauren, I want your thoughts, but just quickly on the audio, I had to turn the subtitles. Like subtitles for this scene is like a must. Like listening to the Anzellans talk without it, I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Well, they say things like the broken, not it's broken, the broken, the broke, and then they'll talk over one another. Yeah.
But even hearing that though, as opposed, like I got a better understanding reading it, even if it didn't make sense reading it, like it wasn't proper English reading it. At least reading it made more sense than listening to it. That said, like Grief Karga's moments in this, like it's so like Carl Weathers of him to be so dry with the humor. But I think that was the point. Like I was laughing during this time from Carl Weathers' performance because he doesn't do comedy and hope I don't offend anybody. I don't think he does comedy very well. He's better at doing drama. But when he does comedy, it's so like awkward that it's funny, if that makes any sense. And he was like in his prime being awkward and over the top with translating and him squatting down and looking. I mean, the whole thing was very comedic and felt Star Wars appropriate. So I did enjoy it, but I had to turn the subtitles on for that. So, Lauren, what did you think about the Anzellan scene? Because I know this was a highlight for you.
Yes, this was my favorite scene of the episode. And I laughed even during every rewatch. I knew it was coming and it still made me laugh. I personally, I liked the puppets a lot, but for me, I always prefer puppets. So because I feel that way, if there's issues with the puppets, I look at it with a very like sympathetic eye, and because I'm so happy that they use the puppets, I don't really notice the issues as much, if that makes sense. But I just thought the whole scene was just really cute, and I loved the comedy aspect of it as well.
Yeah. You had said something earlier. I don't know if you have it available, but you'd mentioned there was someone who was speaking about this here recently about puppets versus CGI and the use of.
Yes. Okay. So something that I heard several weeks ago. So I'm a big fan of Brandon Sanderson. He's like one of my favorite fantasy writers. And on his own podcast, this subject came up, and he said that Henson's law is computer effects will inevitably become dated, but cool puppets are always cool puppets. And that's like pretty much exactly how I feel. So I'll always take a cool puppet, even if the mouth doesn't really match the words.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw that with Yoda, right? Because Yoda within the Empire Strikes Back still holds up so well, but the Yoda they used for episode 1 had to be replaced within just a couple of years, right? Just immediately. So there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, and Rian Johnson went back to that too, right? I mean, he had a decision to make, and he went with the cool puppet, and went to great lengths to recreate that puppet from the mold. I mean, we all know kind of the story if you know the behind the scenes of that, but for that scene with him and Luke, I mean, they went and recreated that thing from original molds and everything else to try to make it look exactly like it. So I think it works in both ways. I totally get, I enjoy the scene overall. I do understand the lip syncing part because it was throwing me off at times, but overall, I think the scene was funny. It did feel like Star Wars. It felt there was a moment of levity here, which was probably needed in this episode. And then
make no mistake, I did too. I laughed during the scene as well. And of course, when Grogu decides to jump in there and just give in to his passions, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the whole thing was funny. And Grief Karga, I did like that he was, because he also raised his voice too, like he couldn't hear him. You know, it's just like one of those things when you're trying to translate to someone, they're deaf, so you want to talk louder all of a sudden, like it matters, right?
Right.
So it was just kind of building on top of that. I liked it. It was just this one little part that was just nitpicky kind of thing.
I like that he translated every line. Like even after he told him not to, he still continued to do it and translated the lines that were very clear and obvious. He still went ahead and made the effort to do it for him. That's the part that was cracking me up. I want to go quickly because there's some chat here or some comments here about what we're talking about. He says that this is Jeff saying that joke honestly was the most unexpected thing of the entire episode about using your head. Gary says, yes, he channeled his Action Jackson. How do you like your ribs type line? So you have to see Action Jackson, which is it's an action movie that Carl Weathers did, but it's got a lot of cheesy one-liners. Think about around the time when Schwarzenegger, a number of these guys were doing these action hero flicks in the 80s. That's a good example of his comedic timing or lack thereof. Jeff says, I was a big fan of the puppets throughout the episode. The Kowakian monkey lizards just chilling in the tree were thumbs up. I forgot we didn't talk about them. That's a big turnaround from season 1 where they were on spigots and being eaten, and now they're just kind of hanging out and being free. So, man, Navarro really is a place for everybody. Okay, I don't know, there's no comment there. Let's go to the big moment in the scene, Bad Baby, where Grogu out of nowhere
no squeezy,
decides
no
to
squeezy.
Go easy. Yeah, no squeezy. No squeezy. This is a good moment. There's going to be millions of memes and forever immortalized, but it certainly gives you the scale of the Anzellans compared to Grogu, because, man, these guys are tiny little mice compared to him.
It's like the only being that is smaller than Grogu, basically.
Yeah.
He's like, finally, something that's my size.
He
Well,
just
used to
had
be-
to hug him.
He had to hug him. Yep. Lauren, do you want to add anything here? Because this is kind of like right up your wheelhouse. In your wheelhouse.
Yeah, Bad Baby, I think it might be my new favorite line from this show, honestly. And it just, I don't know, it just hit me. I just loved it.
You need to change your thing down there to Bad Baby instead of At Lauren Cover Star Wars, because that's more important.
True. Okay.
So
That
No,
might be
Okay.
mildly suggestive, but yeah.
All right. We talked about earlier about this part. Okay, so all right. So all the funny stuff aside, the takeaway was he needs this memory chip thing, or dang it, what was it called? Memory circuit, right? He needs a memory circuit to get IG-11 back online. I'm with you. Like the only person, like I started thinking, like, okay, he says, well, if the Anzellans can't find it, who else could? Well, the only people that we know that could probably are going to be the dang Jawas. They seem to have everything. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it more recently in Kenobi and how they were kind of able to procure all kinds of weird stuff. And, you know, whether it's a famous IG unit, not going to name any names, that donates his or theirs to this, or they find it or whatever else. I don't think that's important, but it would be or it's now the reason why he would go back to Tatooine, because we know he's going to spend some time with Peli Motto before they shove off again. So seems like the most logical choice here. Any other thoughts or where they could have found this part?
I'm trying to think. I think in the comic books, I mean, not that this is a thing, but I think in the comic books, I think IG-88 actually, one of his deaths, because IG-88 used to make copies of himself, so he'd be destroyed all the time and he'd be picked back up. But I think one of his deaths was on Tatooine. I think in a battle with Boba Fett or something along those lines. I can't remember which comic this was. So it wouldn't be surprising if it was an IG-88 memory circuit that the Jawas had scavenged at some point in a very deep cut into the comic books, which would be kind of neat. Not that I don't have any idea how they would actually make that reference, that was like where this was sourced from, if at all, because this is probably not a thing, but that'd be pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. The other thought was, I mean, the other group of folks in Star Wars that are great engineers or great with robotics would be, what are they called? Dang pig guys, Queel's race.
The Ugnaughts.
Ugnaughts, thank you. So now that's a far stretch. Like I don't know where they would come with that, or I'm not saying maybe they resurrect Creel to come back to provide the circuit, and then they have the whole crew back. I'm kidding.
No, that would be too dark.
Too dark. But yeah, I mean it's a short list of who could actually procure something like this.
They go to Tantus and they find all the cloning equipment.
Yep. Sabayoth is there. Heir to the Empire starts.
Oh,
okay.
no.
Here we go. Easy peasy. Okay, so they jump in there. So they head off. They leave the. He's kind of giving them the lessons about, okay, this is how you navigate the enemy proximity warning indicator. I've got a lot of questions about how this thing works, but they're trivial. But nonetheless, it goes off, and we get the whole kind of asteroid battle that happens. I enjoyed the battle. Honestly, I love the fact that none of them died by slamming into an asteroid. I think I've seen that way too many times now. It seems like just par for course, and I was, fully expecting it, and they didn't do it. Plus, I think it gives Mando the credibility that he should have for being somebody that is able to kind of stalk the way he did, because he did stalk them in this asteroid field the entire time.
And what was really cool is that it was leveraging the ability of this starfighter versus what the Razor Crest would have been too,
Yeah,
which I thought was just fun, right? I mean, using the not only the agility of it when he was hugging the asteroid while inverted.
Mm-hmm.
It was inverted. Yeah.
Top Gun reference. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that element plus, like you were saying, the surprise. It was almost like the prison episode that was very horror inspired with the flashing lights, and he would like appear back, except it was like the spaceship version of it, which I thought was just a lot of it. I thought there was a kind of a fun correlation with some of that too. That is neat. But yeah, I like that it was very much a hunter and prey type of situation where there was never in doubt, even when they were behind him. He had all of the abilities and the equipment to be able to handle it.
I'm starting to question whether or not 3PO's odds were right. 3,720 to 1. I think it was a lot less than that, because we see more and more people surviving asteroid fields.
This was a very different asteroid field, though, than what they encountered with the Falcon.
And the ship was way smaller, too.
Okay, fine.
I'm not talking about a big freight.
Well, okay. All right. I'll concede. 3,720 is still the right odds. I thought this was not intentional. I don't know what it was, but it like tickled me pink when he says, "Has anyone got eyes on the Mandalorian?" And they cut over to the Trandoshan with those creepy eyes looking around. I don't know. I guess it wasn't intentional, but just the timing of that, like why did you have to pick up? Like, hey, it's something about the Trandoshan's eyes. And I think, we got this in, it was in Mandalorian is when they first started, they gave us the CGI eyes, or maybe they're not CGI, maybe they're practical or whatever, but it's just really creepy now, seeing them look around.
And they were front and center in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. But yeah, watch that back. Maybe you'll laugh now too. And he's like, oh, because he looks cross-eyed, like he's not really even
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, he's like weird. Again, not intentional, but it's a funny moment. Okay, so then he gets we get the never trust a pirate line, and he hits the nitrous oxide and blasts out of there. But this is right after we get the swamp thing. So back to, more plant than man. Pirate Gorian shard is shown here. I don't know what race this is. Did anybody catch that? Anybody do any research? I didn't even get a chance to look it up.
No. Reminded me of like Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I've been seeing people compare him to that, and it's very appropriate.
Yeah. We talked about Swamp Thing. It's whatever it is. It's some kind of a plant creature. It's really not important, but other than, like we said earlier, where I think they will be back either in the series or they may play a larger role.
Maybe he's the humanoid version of the Drengir.
Well, that's true too.
I actually thought about the Drengir as well. Distant relation.
I mean, you think about it. Right now, all of the comic books are all at the Maxine station. Like, literally all of them.
Who would have thought we would be back at the Maxine station this much? So, again, more the High Republic stuff for you 10 people that follow it with us. Okay, so then I'm kidding. There's a lot more than that. We go to Calabella. So Calabella is a planet that was it's a Mandalorian planet. There's the Mandalorian castle that we see. This was first mentioned in the Clone Wars. This is the birthplace of Bo-Katan and of Satine Kryze. So we've never seen this before that I remember. I didn't get a chance to look into this either, but this is our first time seeing it. I never pictured it looking like Ireland, where it's like green and water, but it was still kind of cool that we got to see it. This will be an important place too. I think we'll come back to this in the series, but either of you have any thoughts on?
We know at least once because we have to have her at the window. So.
Oh, that's right. Yep, in the trailer.
Yeah,
yep.
Some of the trailer, and again, not that we're going to get all the scenes from the trailer, but yeah, this was an interesting scene. I mean, just her dejectedness, I think, is really the Bo-Katan. Just all of the swagger, all of the confidence, all of the energy to go and reclaim Mandalore is just out the window. You can just see it, just her words of how far how quickly everything just fell apart. And you could clearly see that she blames Din Djarin for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the things that we had speculated on, that we were unsure about, how does she go and want to try to reclaim the Darksaber or challenge Din Djarin, now they become a lot more apparent, right, of what she might do, especially if he goes and she's saying, well, good luck with that. And then we clearly see her that maybe she is chasing after him. So you can start to make a lot of connections there now.
Lauren, what were your thoughts before we get into some of the details? How did you feel about this particular scene, her body language, all of that?
It just kind of had me wondering where she's going to go from here, because I wrote the word dejected in my notes too. Like, that's the exact word that I used, because she's just completely, she seems like she kind of doesn't know what to do now, outside of, I mean, really her only option is the Darksaber, since no one really cared
Mm-hmm.
when she showed up without it. And it does make me wonder, what is she going to do? Because getting the Darksaber in a way that counts, I think, is going to be tricky, because previously when she explained this to Din, he was like, "Okay, here, have it. I don't want to lead." So the fact that he was willing to give it to her, it makes me wonder if she did win it from him, would it even count in that case? So
Yeah.
I kind of don't know what she's going to do with that.
And what do y'all think about her comment, though? Just take it out and wave it around. They'll follow anything. I mean,
I think she believes that.
She really threw them under the bus, right? They're just a bunch of mercs now, out there around the galaxy. They'll do whatever they want if you just show them the hardware.
It also sounds like she's starting to recognize that it's a silly concept, maybe, because she probably is more qualified to lead than Din is, but nobody cares.
And it's a stupid thing to rally around, right? It's an object. I mean, I get symbolism is always important in things to rally around, but I'm with you, Laura. I think she's probably saying, well, everything is around this stupid thing, but that's not what's important. But I'm questioning what does she feel like what's actually important? Is it reclaiming Mandalore, or is it being recognized as the leader, the rightful leader of the clan, and redemption in her eyes? Or is it purely the ego of having this thing to be recognized as the rightful leader? Or is it some combination of all of that, though?
Yeah.
I thought a combination.
Yeah.
I think she does have some pure motivations in a way, but also it's her ego at the same time.
Yeah, there was an interview with Katie Sackhoff. I think it was recently. I think I listened to it on Sky Talkers, I think. But there was an interview they did with Katie Sackhoff, and she was talking about how Bo-Katan is very confident, I'd say egotistical, maybe in some way, right? And a lot of that makes sense because of who she is. Her bloodline, her lineage is just such that she's an heiress, to quote the name of the title from season 2, right? So some of that seems very natural. I think for her, she is in this moment pretty much, I would say, yes, she's very dejected because she does not have anything left at this point. Everybody's left her. She doesn't have a Darksaber. She's sitting on an empty throne, which means nothing. So, I mean, she's just stuck. There's nothing for her to do. And suddenly you got Din Djarin showing up at her door saying, hey, I'm heading to Mandalore and I'm going to, go through everything he's talking about doing. And I do wonder, at this point, her only option at this point is to very likely follow him to Mandalore or be there and join him. And again, we're in the trailer, we see moments where it looks like she is with Grogu. She makes that comment, but you think your father was the Mandalorian, right? So we know she shows up. But if it were me, if I were her, I think what I would do is show up and say, look, one of two things. Either she's going to try to win it in combat, which I think she has to do because, again, in season 2, the finale, he hands it to her. She doesn't take it. She could have easily just taken it, but to what Moff Gideon said was she can't. She truly believes that has to be won in combat. So either she's going there to figure out a way to win it in combat when she gets to Mandalore, or, God forbid something happened to the Mandalorian while he's there and going through the trials or whatever it is that he's going through. As an opportunistic person, she may just be there to pick up the Darksaber and say, well, technically I didn't win it in battle, but it can't fall under the hands of the Empire or anybody else at this point. So I'll just wield it since I had it before. It may be a matter of convenience for her to at least just be there, give herself the opportunity to get it back should he not make it through that.
Do you really think she's that desperate to where she would go against what she was so hell bent on doing before, though?
I do. What is she? She doesn't have anything left. I mean, I don't. I mean, if
But
she
she's already
didn't,
been
then
down-
she would just sit there and wait for nothing, right?
But she's
I
already
mean,
been down that road, I think is my point. Like, it didn't work well the first time. So why would they just having it? Does that give you the credibility for everybody else to come around? If that's even what her goal is at this point, I think that's the part I'm struggling with is if she gets it, does she expect people just to show up? Does she think that little of them now? Or does she even want that? Or is she just going to take it? She's just going to cram it down their throats.
I think she'll get her. I think the people that followed her because she had it and was, quote, just waving it around, I think they will come back. And that's more than she has now. I think if it were me, I would at least start there and then maybe try to figure out the rest. And even if she doesn't, right? Even if she doesn't figure out how to unite everybody, at least she has the Darksaber, which she feels belongs to her. And at least she now has her followers back. So she can rule or she can have some kind of power. I think she's bottomed out at this point. So, I mean, she feels desperate, and I think she will grasp or do anything she has to, even if it's a repeat of some of the bad behaviors or some of the things that she's done in the past.
Right. Yeah, Laura, what do you think about her basically calling Den out for being like, hey, now you show up wanting to help, it's too late, just like your clan was before. Every time you guys show up, it's just on your own time. And I mean, anything to that? Do you just think it just adds salt to the wound?
Yeah, and it's starting to sound like she's having some resentment that was directed at the clan. Now she has a specific person to direct it to, even though he sounds like he's not even aware of the full scope of what she's referencing. But I think he's going to kind of be her scapegoat. And I suspect that she might turn on him in the future.
It certainly is starting to be suggested that way, right?
Yeah, but I mean, did y'all think that? I mean, yes, she is desperate to achieve her goal, but do y'all think that underneath that desperation that because I've always kind of had the impression that some of her, even though she's desperate and is willing to do some kind of whatever it takes to meet that goal, I felt like in some ways that her goal is like her heart is in the right place in a way. Do y'all feel that way or no?
I do. I completely agree with that. I think you wouldn't have that motivation unless you had that underlying drive to do something better and to unite your people and to, again, not only reclaim like a throne or anything like that, but just reclaim your rightful place in the galaxy. And I think she views that as bigger than herself. And again, to reestablish the Mandalorian presence in the galaxy, I think is really her main driver to that, which is probably why some of this is so upsetting, saying, yeah, I need and maybe some of it's just she's pissed because why do I need this thing in order to actually rally people around a cause that we all should believe in regardless? We should all believe in the Mandalorian way, right? Whatever that way is. And so why can't we do that? Why is this one object now so important? And maybe now, like I think maybe to your point, why this clarity is coming to her now, but she's powerless to really do anything about that.
Yeah, this speaks to when we did the final hype show, we got into a discussion about whether or not she was the antagonist or the villain, and I think we probably all agree here that she's an antagonist, not necessarily a villain. We don't want to vilify her in any way, but she is her heart is in the right place. Like her intentions are pure. The way she's gone about it, or the way she may go about it, I think could be questionable. I think the idea that you can lead by adhering to a very strict creed is just as silly as you can lead by holding the Darksaber. I don't think I think that's what's going to come out, right? It's like they're both holding on to these things that they think are what it means to be the Mandalorian, right? Or Mandalore. Still holding on, like I saw you. They're still holding on to these things. But really, I think what's going to happen is that Din Djarin may be the person that really comes to understand that it's not about those things. And what really is going to pull the group together, there has to be something on Mandalore that's going to unify the groups that supersedes the superstitions of whether your helmet's on or off, or supersedes the idolism of this Darksaber, right? Because like, what does that really mean? And I think that's really what's going to pull everybody together. And I think Din Djarin's going to, when he goes to these trials or whatever it is, the cleansing, I keep saying trials, it's not trials, but he goes to this cleansing of sorts. He spends some time on Mandalore. I think from that, I think he's going to have a very clear vision of like what it's actually going to take. And there's got to be a common threat, like I said, right? We said it's probably the Empire that has set up shop there. They probably have their bases. They're probably operating out of that. Who knows? Like I said, maybe it's Gideon. That's where his base of operations is, to kind of keep out the Mandalorians from showing up again. But something has to be there. There has to be like this global threat that is going to be so big that people are going to have to put aside their differences of whether the helmet's on or off, or whether someone has a dark saber or not, just to come together to retake Mandalore. And I think that feeds into that speech that we hear in the trailer about who are we? What do we stand for? What do we mean? Right? We're stronger together. Like that seems like a rallying speech to attack a common cause. I just don't know what that is exactly yet.
What I think you were maybe alluding to this at the very beginning of the show, is that if they find the living waters, it's an opportunity for Bo-Katan to have that same cleansing, redemption type of that spirit moment that Din Djarin is looking for. And that's something they could somewhat experience together, maybe at different reasons, but also just to be able to have, like that fresh start, cleansing of your sins, the forgiveness of your sins, and just being able to move forward. That atonement is complete. So, and even in the eyes of the other parts of the clan, the Children of the Watch and the armor and all of that, saying, well, no, she did this with me. We did this together. She is forgiven as well. Now we have a path forward to at least say, now granted, they have a fundamental difference of opinion here about what this means, but at least are we starting at the same level now? Are we starting at ground level? We're all on the same plane. I think the answer would be yes in that case. I think that would be a great opportunity for her to be brought back in and again regain credibility, at least from the broader sense, so that there wasn't some stigma assigned to her and just attached to her every time she walks in a room, to all the whispers and everything else, or just the tension immediately comes in. They're like, no, she walked the way of the Mandalore. She did this thing. She's forgiven. This is the way. And they all move forward, And so I think it's a great opportunity for her to do that with Din Djarin, but from a completely different respect.
I wasn't expecting her. I wasn't expecting her forces to have left. Honestly, like that threw me for a loop, because she doesn't have anybody. And going back to that question about, and I don't want to jump ahead too far because we did talk about this already in the final hype show, but like, who leads Mandalore, right? At the end, let's assume at the end of the season there is a ruler of some sort. Who is that going to be? It seems further away now for me for Bo-Katan to get there, because she really has no one at this point, right? They're just she echoed the line of, I'm just a simple man making my way in the galaxy. She said they're mercenaries making their way in the galaxy, or whatever it was. But I don't know how she gets from nothing to, bringing everybody together. Like, the Armorer seems closer to that now, because they actually have forces that are thriving, or at least getting started. No comments. Okay, well,
I
I
let
think
Lord talk that time.
I was just about to say, I was just thinking on what you said. I was just about to say, it does make me wonder. I mean, when you're comparing her to the Armorer, it does make me wonder where the Armorer got all of her people from. And because I had thought that Mandalorians were harder to find because of some episodes that we saw previously of Den going around looking for where's Mandalorians. So I was surprised that the Armorer's numbers had recovered so quickly. But what I was hearing about Bo-Katan not having access to people, that to me actually made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
The way I was equated the other one, though, is more of the coverts. They have a system, and Din Djarin's not always plugged into that system very well. But the Armorer is almost like the hub with all the spokes, and so she's the one that can actually coordinate all of those types of, because you find one, you can find the others type of thing, but Din Djarin was never really plugged in all that well.
Yeah, and when you say that, it does make sense, because she's more of a leader figure, so she probably would know more people.
Yeah, especially if she's, to Albert's point for the last several episodes on this kind of topic, like if she's the one that can craft armor, if she's the only one with that skill set, or at least at that level, then it makes a lot of sense for that group to be able to do it. But again, also you look at it from a consistency, right? This is the like kind of the apostle type of mentality, right? If you know what to expect, you all believe the same thing, you all you're all part of the same, covenant. And even if you break apart in your different families, you come back together. And this is actually kind of the legacy way of Mandalorians working, right? They would,
forever.
this was this nomadic type of thing. But when the call was made, the network of things worked out. You get the call, you dropped everything, you left everything, and you heed the call, and you go to your brothers and sisters, and you do whatever is necessary to do it. So I think in that spirit kind of remains in the purest of forms. But again, you kind of see the benefits of that too, versus what the other Mandalorian cultures have done and struggled with, because they don't have that unifying factor and that clarity of purpose, I think, because they have a lot more flexibility and freedoms, which sometimes just it breaks away, and it takes away your uniformity too, and your ability to champion around a singular cause, because now you have lots of opinion about whether or not, well, you have an opinion, you're allowed to have an opinion. And the other ones, you're like, okay, no, this is the rule, this is what we're going to do, let's do it.
Yeah.
There's an accountability for if you don't follow the rule, there's going to be consequences.
Absolutely, because this is the way, right? I mean, it's the easy answer to everything. If you just say this is the way, everyone's like, oh God, I guess so, fine.
So going back to the rebuilding of the forces question, I think one thing that probably sets them apart from maybe other clans, and I think this is still going to be teased out because I don't know from a canon perspective the ins and out. On Legends, it's different, but from canon, I would say the Children of the Watch are much more accepting of bringing anybody. Like they seem to be kind of aligned with, look, it's really not about where you were born. I mean, we'll take baby Grogu, right? They just kind of said, oh, you're a foundling because you had a moment with somebody. They took Din Djarin in, right? So I think they're more accepting to just bringing people in, and they believe more about, it's the actions that you have, as long as you're adhering to the strict code, right? If you check those boxes, then yeah, you're in. I think when you get to some of the other clans, it's more about like, are you a pureblood? Was your family born on Mandalore or one of or Concordia or, Calvel or whatever area it is, right? There's certain criteria that have to be met before they allow people to come in. I don't know where the Kryze clan stands or House Kryze stands in terms of what they consider to be, rightful people or people that are eligible to be part of that house or clan.
Yeah,
Well, it does remind me of their first interaction between Din and Bo-Katan when he's like, you're not Mandalorian, you took off your helmet. And she's like, well, this armor's been in my family for generations. Like, I feel like that kind of sums up their different views on that.
Yeah, they're really not all that different. And I have a feeling they all agree to the idea and the concept of a foundling too. I think some of it is they just let so many of these other things wedge in between. They've forgotten their commonalities. They've forgotten the things that do unify them. And I think there are probably more than there are. I think there are more things that unify them than that break them apart and separate them from one another. So I think that's the part they've got to go and accentuate, let go of some of these things. But also, if they have a way to cleanse some of that, then maybe that's a way to finally move past some of that. But again, the whole removing your helmet thing is kind of a problem.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we're kind of all saying, I think there will be some kind of a transformational change that happens here with the Mandalorians if they're ever going to come together. I think they're so too splintered at this point that there's going to have to be something that really gets them to look past a lot of these very specific ideals or the dogmas of the different groups to kind of bring them together. What's interesting is
it's almost like they have to be in the same fight together and just do it, right?
Yeah.
Don't think, just act,
Right. Yeah. So that would have to be a pretty big threat. So I'm not sure what that is just yet outside of the Empire or other scary things there on Mandalore. We'll see what that looks like at some point. So the only other thoughts here were, the details about the Beskar is down in the mines. The mines are underneath the Civic Center. Mando says he's going to find out whether or not the planet is poisoned. So we'll get to know whether, there's some radiation in the area. How glassed over is this place at this point? The mission is going to Sindari. So we saw Sindari in the trailer. It was all beat up and damaged. So we'll see what that looks like here a little bit later. But that is the capital. It did show up in the Clone Wars, and it showed up in Star Wars Rebels. So it's kind of a well-established area that we're familiar with at this point. I don't know. All roads lead there, but it does sound like we're going to make another stop. And just quickly, this episode So for people that got to see the premiere 2 nights ago, I think, or last night, I forget now, it's all blending together. They got to see both episodes, 1 and 2. We only got to see one, obviously, right? But from what I'm hearing from feedback and speaking to some of the folks that actually went to the premieres, they've said this episode was really good. They all agreed it probably wasn't the best episode. It wasn't the most, the most incredible episode of The Mandalorian ever. But from what I'm hearing consistently is the next episode is really good. On top of that, this is an arc. These 2 episodes are connected. So it sounds like we're going to get more exposition, the memory circuit, maybe IG-11 gets put back together. He has what he needs. And then starting with the 3rd episode of this season is when we finally get to Mandalore. And I think that, and then we talked about that too. We were probably going to get 1 or 2 at the very beginning. And then the core 4 or 5 episodes is really going to be focused around Mandalore with some leftover and some sprinkled in, Pershing and DNA cloning and Gideon and all that will probably kind of filter in and out.
Yeah, and I know I've maybe sounded a bit harsh on this episode, but it kind of did what we talked about this before. I think with like Bad Batch too, right? It didn't have the same wham as a season premiere would, but this is the 3rd season, and we didn't really have a big cliffhanger type of moment where we expected just to really punch us in the face. And so that it came through and needed to reestablish, and then we'll get some resolution and we'll pick up steam with the 2nd episode is not necessarily surprising in my eyes, and not necessarily a bad thing either. Again, let's get warmed up. Let's ramp it up. Make sure everyone's clear where we're at. Maybe a little bit of a mess on the, how Grogu got reintegrated, but other than that, I think the other thing is that this episode jumped around a little bit. It just kind of bounced around, so it felt maybe a little rough in that kind of thing as we're just trying to rush through and establish all these things, and now we'll get to the good stuff. So we'll see how this plays out with the second chapter here, the chapter 18, whatever we're on. But I mean, overall, good start though. I mean, really solid start.
Yeah.
No red flags at all, right? And it is.
Yeah, like no fouls, no hard fouls done or made here. Lauren, what do you any kind of final thoughts or anything that you still have questions on that we need to tease out or you're looking forward to?
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with Jonesy that I think it's good that they are taking a little bit of time to actually set it up rather than just immediately throwing us right into Mandalore. I'm all for the kind of like setting things up, giving us the information that we need to know before we get there. So that way, once we are there, it works with the story.
Yeah.
So I like the pace that it's taking, and I like where it's going so far. So I'm looking forward to how it's going to go the rest of the few episodes that we have.
Yeah, and the other thing, I didn't mention this in the intro, and I had it to do, and I didn't, but I'll do it now. I mean, this was the first time in history that we've had 2 Star Wars shows, television at the same time. So the fact that we've got 2 Star Wars shows coming out at the same time, I mean, again, regardless of how you felt about it, the fact is we've got a lot of Star Wars coming out now, and we're going to continue to get more Star Wars. So it's all good. Like I'm pretty happy with whatever we get at this point. It just turns out that we had 2 really good episodes of 2 particular shows.
We have a few critical pieces of business to get to here at the very end, but this one in particular. So we will start tracking the Dank Ferret count for season 3. For those who need a refresh from the final hype episode, we have an over-under of 5. I said we would have 4. Albert said we'd have 6. So we'll split the difference. So put your bets in now. Over-under of 5. We are currently at 1 Dank Ferret for season 3. So we are ahead of the game if you're in the over space.
Yep. Yeah,
So
we're trending for 8 at this point, so we're way out of here. But who knows? Maybe they'll
I'm on
temper
the
that.
4 team. 6 seems like quite a lot.
We got like 2 or 3 in one episode last season, though. So I'm a little bit worried about it, too, because you can catch up in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's like the favorite swear right now. So
This is not in the show notes. I was laying in bed the other day, and I was thinking, like, I wonder what Dank Ferret means. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if they get to Mandalore and they realize that Dank Ferret is like a person or was a god, or they actually meet somebody named Dank Ferret, or it's a town. Like, they give it some weird explanation. I just thought that I'd share that.
We
know
should
what
get
doesn't
the
need a-
origin of Dank Ferret like we got the origin of Wizard in the High
There
Republic.
you go. Exactly. Yes. That's kind of where I was thinking. Like, we need the origin now of Dank Ferret because it just comes up a lot.
I think that's our 3rd High Republic reference tonight.
Oh, at least, yeah.
There you go.
But
Try
you-
to segue into that one there, Jonesy.
Well, you know what doesn't
Sorry.
doesn't need a weird segue into it is our amazing people in the live stream. If you're
Okay.
listening to this and you've made it to the very end of this comedy fest, we do a live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can go out there and subscribe to the channel, be notified when we go live. And we wanted to thank everyone who came in the live chat tonight. Alex, Steph, Jonathan, Sky, Rob, Jeff, Gary, David, Miss Sunflower, Keaton, Beacom, Halliday, Emotional Evolution, Derpy Entertainment, Risk, Hard Countered, Rod, anybody that was in the background. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We do encourage you to go out there and check all the content that we've had this past week. It's been a Mando Madness, Mando week, whatever you'd like to call it. Lots of great content with the final hype show, the top 3 with Lauren, Cole, and Cab as well. And that's all still out there on the main feeds and all of that good stuff. And of course, this one as well. So we'd love for y'all to go check that out. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what to expect, what you expect from chapter 18 as we get to that next week. And, but yeah, thanks for coming out and watching the show.
Yep, and we'll be back here this week. We still got to we got to do some Bad Batch coverage. We've got a Patreon show to do, and then we'll be doing all this again here in about a week with the next chapter. So it's going to be it's a rough week to wait now, I think, but this is good. There's already been a lot of discourse and a lot of conversations and a lot of good theories that are being thrown out there about where this series is going to go at this point. So all exciting stuff, and pretty happy with how it turned out.
On behalf of all the bad babies.
Bad baby.
Bad baby.
No squeezy. Okay.
I was not prepared for no squeezy. That made me crack up.
Yeah, we'll have to work that into a show every week or some point, or give it a meaning of some sort. So, okay, we're gonna get out of here. We'll see you guys here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.